everybody, I'm Danny Otto. Welcome into an all-new episode of That Recap Show. Now, normally this would be the section where I say major spoiler alert, but to get set for the new Ghostbusters Frozen Empire movie, we are going back and watching all of the classic Ghostbusters movies. So without further ado, let's start the show!
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.
All right, joining with me to break down everything from Ghostbusters 2, it's Jon Jon Rico!
Hello.
Hello!
I couldn't do the Zool thing today. I just didn't do appropriate.
Well, we didn't have Zool in this one, so yeah. I mean, we had Vigo. You could do I, Rico, and Vigo.
Bring me baby. Oh, I tried.
It reminded me of the scene at the very, very end where Ray's like drooling and looking at the picture during the final boss battle.
Yeah.
And he turns around and goes,
No! I, Ray, and Vigo shall rule!
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Don't even get me started.
oh, we're going to get you started.
We're going to get there. Yeah.
Anyway, before I get you started, I did tease a scene when we were recapping the first Ghostbusters movie where I said there's a scene in this movie that has stuck with me. I mean, I watched both of them at a very young age. This one, I don't actually remember when I watched this one. I remember watching the first one very young, and I'm assuming I probably just watched this one very young too.
This is the one I remember watching, I think, more than the first one, honestly, because there's this visual imagery in there that just resonates more from my childhood than other than Gozer, of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like you were saying with Gozer, something in this film has always stuck with me. And even when I rewatched it for this recap, I was still like, it still creeped me out. Just because now it's like a childhood memory at this point. So it's a childhood freak out. And it's the scene where we have Winston, we have Egon, and we have Ray down on the abandoned railroad track underneath the city, and they're walking and they're talking about how it's been abandoned for all this time. It's what you really got to worry about are the rats. And Winston keeps going, he keeps going. Stop talking about the rats. And all of a sudden, like, they were doing the echo thing too. And Winston goes, "Hello," and that really creepy voice screams Winston. And then they turn, and it's just like the heads, like the decapitated heads are all around them. That image has freaked me out since a kid, like since watching it as a small child. It has always stuck with me. And so it was just like, I unlocked a childhood creeped out memory when I rewatched it the other day.
Large Marge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, that has always stuck with me, and it still freaked me out. It was just like one of those things where I was like, I know this isn't that scary, like watching it now, but I was just like, it still like creeps me out just because it's like one of those things it's always going to creep me out, that part. But I also wanted to add in, so that is always going to stick with me as a scary scene from this movie. It almost felt like it was, to me, so like creepy. It was almost out of place in this movie because I feel like the rest of the movie isn't like that level of creepy to me. So it almost felt out of place. Like if you had watched only that scene, you would have thought this movie was way scarier and way creepier than it really was. But one thing that I did really enjoy is I do like that, unlike the first one where it was our introduction to Slimer and we only had him, we had Slime Venkman, and that was pretty much it. They catch him and, I do like that he pops up a couple times in this, and he's kind of like a lovable nuisance type of thing. Where he's eating Lewis's lunch in one of the scenes, and he's like driving in another scene. Like, I just liked that version of Slimer because, I did like the real Ghostbusters cartoon, and that's where, Slimer was kind of that lovable nuisance type of thing, was in that cartoon. Right. And so like, I really liked that aspect of the movie where we got a little bit more Slimer here and there type of thing. But
They almost try to treat him like the company dog.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, they definitely do in the cartoon.
Yeah.
Like that is what he is in
Definitely
the
the
cartoon.
vibe that I
Yeah,
got from this. Where I was like, yeah, for sure.
exactly. And but yeah, I mean there's look, is it a perfect movie? No. There are parts of this movie that I do enjoy. I will, sprinkle them throughout our recap of some of the parts that I did enjoy in this movie. But Rico, before I get too far ahead of myself, what are some of your instant reactions for Ghostbusters 2?
Yeah, we were talking about the predictions last week about, I was taking my predictions from like a fresh point of view because as much as I know I've seen this in the past, like I don't remember the story at all. Like I don't remember what
Right.
brought the Ghostbusters to where they are in this movie, anything like that. So watching it again, just kind of all the way through and actually following the storyline, I was like, huh, okay. So there's a few things I was already questioning, but I don't know. To me, this is just like, um, to me, why a shining example of why a lot of comedy sequels just didn't work in the past. A lot still don't. For it's a simple reason is that one, I think it's just because you take away the freshness of the first one
Right.
already. Like you already have expectations of what you're expecting coming into this movie, and when it falls under that, it's like it's hard for it to kind of crawl its way back up to victory, right? So some of the stuff that they decided to do in this movie with certain characters, like based on what they could have done off of the last movie, I just thought were really weird or like undercooked at times, or just kind of like uninspired. I felt, and then I felt like they're just kind of recycling some of the same jokes. Like they do the commercial bit again. I thought that was really funny. So like there's sometimes that they do callbacks to the first movie that I think are really good, but I especially like I'll get into it more in my takeaways, but the way they kind of handled the villain, I thought was really odd, and it just felt kind of like lazy to me. Um, but it just kind of felt like the actors were there. Some aren't used as much as they could have been in this one, especially when they were underused in the first one. And yeah, it just left a lot to be desired from me. And I don't know. I feel like I have fond memories of certain aspect of this. I think the scene of the Statue of Liberty walking is actually really awesome. Like
Yeah.
it looks. I just like the way like when they showed the feet are moving. I'm like, okay, there's actually some really cool looking effects for the time. I thought, um, and there's some really good like when I look at single shots of the movie, there's some really good individual cinematography shots as well. So from a filmmaking standpoint, it's not a horribly made movie. There's just decisions made in the movie that are just like, man, it could have been much better.
Yeah. I mean, just like I said, but before you started, talking about your instant reactions, is it a perfect movie? No. But there are aspects to enjoy in this movie type of thing. And I will always love the Statue of Liberty scene. I'll always remember Bill Murray singing out of the crowd.
Yeah. I do like the use of that song throughout the movie as well, how that
Yeah.
was set up with the toaster and
Yeah.
all that. So there's story threads that do work out pretty well. It's just there's just a lot that doesn't.
That's what I was gonna point out. That was one of my favorite scenes of
Mhm.
this movie that will always make me laugh is when they have the toaster dancing and Venkman is like, "This is what you guys have been doing. This is what you guys do." Like, I just love like his reaction to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we sing to it, like just like I loved that part. But you want to get to some big takeaways?
Sure.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to kick off big takeaways. And, just like kind of what we've both kind of been agreeing on is, this isn't a perfect movie. There are weird, decisions that were made in this. But I thought, and even rewatching it, and, compared to the first one, just like you said, the first one is, it's a fresh idea. It's this, kind of came out of nowhere type of thing movie. And the second one just doesn't live up to it. But what I was thinking about as I was rewatching it for this recap was I think the under theme of this movie works or would have worked if it was kind of put to play better. And it's where it's kind of like, there's a falling out both between the members and between, the city, I guess, of the business. And we have this story of we've got to get the band back together because there's a bigger threat. And I think like that theme, if put to play better, could have put out a good sequel because I think that works as a sequel. Like we can't up the ante without hitting a low end. And that was what I was kind of talking about in predictions, when I was, kind of saying like, I think we had this movie had been like an original movie now where we can have a company series and small scale stuff to kind of build other things up. I said we had to hit a valley before we could hit another peak. And so like that kind of theme of story, I think would have worked if it had been put to better use and maybe more time had passed for them to hit their bottom before, they could have like the getting the band back together, get back into the spotlight, good graces of everyone. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like that theme could have worked as a sequel is all I'm saying, because it would, hit them at their lowest and then build them back up to their peak again, type of thing, to put them on top at the end of the movie. I just think, it just wasn't put to play as well. And that's kind of my thought is I like the idea of them getting back together, because it's not an origin story again, but it's like, it's building those relationships back again. And I think that's a universal theme that we, you can get into in a sequel of a movie. But Rico, what were some of your takeaways from Ghostbusters 2?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was kind of questioning to begin with, is like, why are we starting off with them no longer together? Because we ended the first movie with them literally probably at the peak of like their talents, and like they're probably like their stock. Their stock is at its highest right there, because they just saved the city from like this clear like paradimensional like being that was in the sky in the first movie, and then all of a sudden like we're Bankman's hosting like a TV show, and then Ray and Winston are doing kids' birthday parties at the beginning of this movie. I'm just like, what happened to our Ghostbusters? Like, to me, that didn't feel earned yet. I think that's something that could have worked either like a third movie, or even if you had something like if you had started the movie with them like at their in their prime already, like kind of thriving off of like that win in the first movie, and kind of getting to see them advance a little bit as a team, and then kind of see them take that fall. Because it just kind of seemed like they had just started all like over, and we got to see the first movie again in just just with the same characters again, right? So yeah, that part was one of the things I wasn't really sure about. Our boy Winston gets the shaft again, I think, in this movie, because he shows up at the kids party, and I feel like he disappears for a good length of the movie, and then he just comes back and helps them out when they start to get rolling on this whole on the Vigo thing, right? I just feel like I was like, man, but we're like poor Ernie Hudson. But he comes back, right? So it's pretty cool. So a weird use of Peter McNichol, who is a really good actor, who plays, was it Jonas in this movie, the art restoration guy?
Yeah.
Boy, that accent was just really something throughout this whole movie, especially when I've seen him just be like a straight man in like the Mr. Bean movie back in the day, and he's one of the camp trainers in Addams Family. Like I remember just seeing him so much throughout my childhood in like the 90s and stuff like that, and then I see him in this movie and just like, what is he doing? He's even in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as an Asgardian professor, which I thought was a really cool little guest role for him. Yep. I got my wish of Lewis being a Ghostbuster, but not really. He just kind of like, it's the great shot of him coming out of the station with like, with the uniform on. And then he gets there and he thinks he did something, but he didn't really do anything.
Yeah, everyone who's outside thinks
he gets to kind of live as the star for that
moment.
Gets
Janine. He gets Janine.
Yeah. By the way, worst babysitter ever. First of all, who's bringing random dudes to your first babysitting gig at a house? But hey, the 80s. What can I tell you? Boy, Vigo is a character that I just remember seeing throughout my childhood. That painting is really terrifying looking. Never disrespected the actor, but that is one ugly dude. Terrifyingly ugly dude. And then when he's defeated by the songs of New Year's Eve, I was just like, what is happening now? He had finally had his moment. He's feeling pretty good, and all of a sudden, what is this singing?
It's the mood slime. They're all getting together and they're all joyous. Like it's ridiculous. It's the counteraction. That's why they use the opposite mood slime, and everybody broke the
So that's my takeaway.
All right. Well, do you want to? Would you like to get to predictions?
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Would you like to go first?
No.
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 All right. So we obviously know there's another movie after this one, but what I did want to talk about is something we were talking about. I can't remember if we were talking about it before we even decided to start recapping these, or if I had mentioned it after the first one. There was they were in the process of writing a script for a third Ghostbusters, a direct sequel to the second one, would be taking place directly after. I knew it had something to do with hell. It was actually going to be called Ghostbusters 3 Hellbent. And there's an article on Screen Rant. I mean, there was a ton of articles about it, and they've been asked in interviews and stuff like that. But I pulled from the one on Screen Rant just because I kind of, they're a little bit of a reputable name. And they were talking about how, they couldn't get the right script. And at this point, Bill Murray was starting to have a falling out with Harold Ramis already. And there were just other things that were kind of, going back and forth that it wasn't going to work out. And they just, at some point, they just pulled it. But there is
after Ramis passed, they
right.
officially were like, well, it's not going to happen now.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Harold Ramis passed, years and
later
years
on. Yeah, but they were trying forever.
Right.
Yeah.
And we got the video game. I think that was the last thing that Harold Ramis voiced as Egon. That was the video game. So that was kind of ish a sequel because it had everybody originally back. But yeah, I just thought it was really interesting that they were actually writing Ghostbusters 3 during the filming of Ghostbusters 2. So this was going to be a direct sequel. I mean, like we were both saying, it's probably a good thing that it didn't really happen, because that might have been the final nail in the coffin. Like, it probably would not have been very well received. I mean, it was talking about them going to a hell version of Manhattan and having to fight like a bunch of ghosts and demons that they had sent, type of thing, and all this stuff. And even if it had come out 5 years after this one, we're still talking like 93, 94. So there would be no CGI there. There would be you know what I mean? It would be real rough looking. So we may have not got, future installments. That might have been the end for good, type of thing. So it's probably better that this didn't come, at least in my opinion, it's probably better that this did not come out as a direct sequel, because as we're going to talk about, this is a tease for another recap. When we start talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife, I really enjoy that. And I'm glad that it took so long to get there, because I think it does justice to the past movies, and it does open the door, obviously, because we know that Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is coming out in a month or so from now. And so and that's going to, open the doors for other stuff. And I mean, I might get my wish if this takes off. We may get a series type of thing moving forward. The sky's the limit type of thing. And I just think enough time has passed where we can honor the past Ghostbusters, and we can also have this new team. And so I'm happy that this kind of, they decided it was in their best interest to not force this to come out, or the third one to come out when they were writing it, basically, when things got in the way. But Rico, as far as predictions, have you seen Afterlife? You may not have seen it.
I've not seen Afterlife yet. No.
So do you want to make some predictions about what will come next?
Of this, for the characters?
I mean, it's interesting because I loved Afterlife, and I've seen it already. I've seen it multiple times. So I can't really make any predictions about what's going to pick up after.
Right. But, you know how the story follows up.
Right.
Essentially, yeah.
But I think it's a good situation because you don't know, and it takes place, 20, 30 years after. It takes place present day. I think it takes place in 2018, 2019 type of thing. But yeah, came out in 2021.
What I was going to say was that had it not been for Afterlife, kind of being that the thing that brought life back to the franchise, essentially, especially we've had a couple of swings and misses with number 2, and then the Paul Feig version didn't land as well with him as either. So I would have almost said this would have been this Ghostbusters should have been one of those comedies that should have been one of those one and dones. almost like because like the more that comes out, I almost want to like tainted the legacy, right? Almost the same thing of like Jurassic Park. It's almost like a Jurassic Park, but like for sci-fi comedy. It's almost
I thought you
it's
were
like
gonna say
the first one
Indiana
is so
Jones.
good, but everything else just kind of Indiana Jones is well, Indiana Jones has multiple good ones, so that to its credit, I think the other ones are just you always just see like a steady decline in quality, and thankfully, like after Afterlife, we saw a rejuvenation in quality for the franchise, which is really good, and especially tying it all back within the continuity as well. So yeah, I'm excited to see kind of like how they build off of this being so far ahead in the future. Of course, you because you can play around with fresh ideas as well as nostalgic ideas as well. So yeah, I think I'm just really kind of looking forward to experiencing it for the first time. Now that I have these two stories in my head, I can kind of give them reference to when I watch Afterlife now, and it won't just feel like I'm watching a new movie on its own. So that'll be cool, be an added experience. But if I want to see characters from here pop up, I mean, without question, like any of the originals, like I would imagine would be shoo-ins. But like like the one I want the most is Rick Moranis. Just because he's been out of the public eye for so long,
Yeah.
I feel like he's the guy that like this is gonna be like the time where they'll bring him back eventually. And if we get like a Sigourney Weaver cameo in some version, or at least some kind of a nod to her character, that'd be kind of cool. Like, hey, or what about little baby Oscar? What's he up to? How's he
I
living
was
after
always
those?
wondering,
Yeah.
what was gonna happen with
Who
us.
names their baby Oscar these days? But, but like that was just the funniest. When I was like, "This is my baby. His name is Oscar." I was like, "What a name!" But I loved it. It was really great. But yeah, that'd be pretty funny. Like that'd be a really fun little nostalgic callback if you're like, "Hey, this is my friend Oscar." It's like, I actually know who you. Yeah, so that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if Oscar was ever gonna pop up again. I mean, I'm not gonna spoil anything for
That would have been a
Afterlife for you.
cool like future sequel thread to go into if you
Exactly.
didn't have an idea like something happened to Oscar, of course. Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, yeah, I can't wait for you to experience Afterlife and give your because that's basically gonna be not a retro recap for you. It's gonna be a retro recap for me, but not for you, type of thing, because you're gonna be watching it for the first time. But I did really enjoy it. I had a really cool personal experience with it, which I'll go over when we're recapping Afterlife. I get to see some stuff before some stuff.
Oh, that's right. I remember.
Yeah, which was really cool. But I'll bring that up when we recap Afterlife. But as we always
And
say,
Paul Rudd too. Who doesn't love Paul Rudd?
exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, as we always say, that's what we think. Let us know in the comments below. What were your favorite moments from Ghostbusters 2? Like we've both agreed, it may not be a perfect movie, but there were some funny parts. There were some memorable parts. There were some creepy parts. What were some of your favorite moments from Ghostbusters 2? And as always, don't forget, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to hear about all of our latest audio and video podcast releases. Bye, everybody!
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.